copy of that lingo.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling to order this meeting of our Housing Policy and Development Committee. It's great to see the room so full. This is one of our bigger meetings and cause for celebration here every year to near the end of the year, where we discuss some of our biggest financing projects having to do with affordable housing. So I'm glad you're all here. Welcome to my committee members. We're joined today by Council Members Reich, Goodman, Bender, and Schrader. We're certainly a quorum of the committee, and we can do our business. There's one consent item on the agenda today, and two public hearings, and then several discussion items. So I'm going to move our consent item first. This is has to do with Harriet Tubman Center and authorizing forgiveness of some accrued interest and some previous housing loans. Would anyone like to pull that for discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. That motion carries. And then I'd like to move to our public hearings. I believe I'm going to get a little report from Ms. Coleman, who will be one of the stars of today's meetings. This is a land sale at 914 19th Avenue Northeast. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, members of the committee. My name is Erica Coleman, Senior Project Coordinator with CPED Housing. Staff is recommending sale of 914 19th Avenue Northeast through the Minneapolis Homes program. Policies for the program were established by City Council on December 11th, 2015, and on February 10th, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 914 19th Avenue Northeast to Greater Metropolitan Housing Corporation, better known as GIMIC, for its appraised value subject to conditions. 914 19th Avenue Northeast was acquired on June 11th, 1993 from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for $3,600. Due to the complicated nature of the site, size, and site conditions, the property has been unsuccessfully marketed for sale, either as a side yard or assemblage since acquisition in 1993. Staff marketed the property for development of a housing unit affordable at 80% area median income to council-approved HOW developers. One offer was received from GIMIC. To evaluate responsibility, staff consulted with the Department of Regulatory Services staff to verify the status of vacant buildings, rental properties, and/or any other properties owned by the proposed purchaser in the city of Minneapolis. There were no concerns. The property is approximately 2,975 total square feet at a lot size of 35 by 85 feet. The purchaser proposes to build a net zero, single-family, two-story, three-bedroom, 2 1/2 bathroom home with approximately 1,500 square feet and an open front porch. GIMIC intends to work with a long-term affordable housing provider during the marketing of the home. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates that are submitted by the applicant and confirmed the scope of work and estimates are sufficient to meet the standards of the Minneapolis Homes program. In 2020, staff intends to add this property along with other eligible properties in the Housing Replacement District. Notification was provided to the Logan Park Neighborhood Association on August 19th, 2019. They are in support of GIMIC's proposed development plans. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because this is a land sale, we have a public hearing for it, so I'll open that public hearing to see if anybody would like to come up and speak on this matter. Seeing no one stepping forward, then I'll close the public hearing, and I will take comments, discussion, or a motion. Councilmember Reich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note I appreciate the work GIMIC did to advance beyond just a basic environmental approach to the building, but to step it up a little bit. Even though it's a small single-family lot, we can always advance those goals, and GIMIC stepped up and did it. So I wanted to note that, and by way of making a motion to approve.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that motion. Seeing no other comments, then all those in favor of Councilmember Reich's motion to approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And now we'll move on to our second item, another land sale. This is at 4105 12th Avenue South.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, members of the committee. Erica Coleman, Senior Project Coordinator, CPED Housing. Staff is recommending sale of 4105 12th Avenue South through the Minneapolis Home Program. Policies from the program were established by City Council on December 11th, 2015 and February 10th, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 4105 12th Avenue South to Greater Metropolitan Housing Corporation, better known as GIMIC, for its appraised value, subject to conditions. 4105 12th Avenue South was acquired on September 6, 2018 from Hennepin County as tax forfeited land for $125,000. Staff marketed the property for development of affordable housing unit at 80% area mean income to council-approved HOW developers. One offer was received from Gimmick. To evaluate responsibility, staff consulted with the Department of Regulatory Services staff to verify the status of vacant buildings, rental properties, and/or any other properties owned by the proposed purchaser in the city of Minneapolis. There were no concerns. The property was constructed in 1935 and is a 2,408 square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family home that will be rehabilitated to meet the program's rehabilitation standards. The purchaser proposes to invest $176,125 to rehabilitate 4105 12th Avenue South as a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family home to be sold exclusively to an owner-occupied household at or below 80% area mean income. Gimmick intends to work with a long-term affordable housing provider during the marketing of the home. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates that were submitted by the applicant and confirmed the scope of work and estimates are sufficient to meet the rehabilitation standards of the Minneapolis Homes program. In 2020, staff intends to add this property along with other eligible properties in the housing replacement district. Notification was provided to the Bancroft neighborhood on August 19, 2019. Are there any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you very much. This is also a land sale, so we will have a public hearing on this matter. I'll open that public hearing and see if anybody here wishes to speak on this. Step forward if you would like to speak on it. Seeing no one stepping forward, then I'll close the public hearing. And I will move this forward for approval. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. That motion carries then. Now we'll move on to our discussion items, and we'll welcome back Ms. Coleman for a report on our Home Ownership Opportunity Program. That's just fine. Actually, the next two items we'll be talking about home ownership opportunities and some
Andrea?
Is it on there?
contracts.
Yeah, it's plugged in, but then I did a shortcut and it won't open it.
Here. Did you take it out and put it back in?
I'm sure there must be some public service announcement one of us can make.
How many steps does it take?
Did you do this?
Important public hearing.
There we go.
next month.
Thanks.
Okay.
Oh.
We're doing home program. There we go.
Mic is on. That was enough energy in there.
Hello. Thanks for your patience.
No problem.
Thank you, Committee Chair Gordon and members of the committee. Erica Coleman, Senior Project Coordinator with CPED Housing. Today I'm bringing forward the report on our Homeownership Opportunity Minneapolis Program Impact. The City of Minneapolis has a homeownership disparity gap of 33%, higher than the U.S. rate of 25%. The homeownership disparity gap is defined as the percent difference between white households and Black, Indigenous, people of color, also known as BIPOC, households who own their homes. When disaggregated, Black and Indigenous communities have the greatest racial disparity in homeownership. White households remain the only racial group for which the majority own their homes, and just 1 in 4 households headed by BIPOC own their home in Minneapolis. While most renter households are white, large majorities of households from every racial group rent their home, and the share of each of these groups who rents changed little between 2008 to 2012 to 2013 and 2017. Black households are the only other racial group to see real change in their homeownership rate. In 2000, 32% of Black householders own their home, but that number has remained around 20% since the 2008-2012 average. The Homeownership Opportunity Minneapolis, better known as HOME program, was approved and amended by City Council in 2018 to provide down payment and closing cost assistance, up to $10,000 for households below 80% area median income and up to $5,000 for households between 81 to 115% area median income. The program is currently administered by Build Wealth Minnesota and NeighborWorks Home Partners. The HOME program has an average annual budget of $500,000 and serves annually on average 55 households. Research has determined that home buyers that have gone through a home buyer training session are more successful homeowners. In June 2016, the HOME program guidelines were modified from previous year's program guidelines to include a prerequisite for financial wellness counseling, in addition to home buyer education, with the goal of improving the participation level of BIPOC households. Financial Wellness offers comprehensive credit, budget, and savings education and counseling that prepares prospective homebuyers for mortgage financing and overall financial sustainability tools. To increase the opportunity for sustainable homeownership for low to moderate income and BIPOC households in Minneapolis, the city contracted with the Minnesota Homeownership Center, known as the HOC, to administer financial wellness counseling services. HOC has a network of service providers to meet the needs of a diverse population and partners with nonprofit, culturally specific organizations to provide services to meet the goal of reducing the homeownership disparity gap. Currently, HOC has an approved list of 10 financial wellness counseling agencies that have a focused outreach approach to BIPOC communities. In 2017, the total number of households receiving financial wellness counseling was 407. In 2018, this number increased to 586 households. In 2017 and 2018, 80% of the households served identified as BIPOC and were at or below 80% area median income. From January through August 2019, 422 households have been served. Detailed 2019 demographic data will be available first quarter 2020. Since the added financial wellness prerequisite, the rate of service to BIPOC households has more than doubled. In 2015, the rate of service was 39%, and in 2018, the rate of service was 85%. From 2015 to 2018, the average household income was consistently around $52,000 or 54% area median income. To continue the progress made and in response to public feedback regarding the need to build capacity with residents and business owners of North Minneapolis, in 2017, the City Council approved an amendment to the Grow North Down Payment Assistance Pilot Program. On August 31st, 2018, the City Council approved modifications to the program guidelines to align with the HOME program homebuyer assistance amounts, up to $10,000 for homebuyers at or below 80% AMI, and up to $5,000 for home buyers between 81 to 115% AMI, and authorize a lending administration contract with Build Wealth Minnesota. The program has expended the initial $100,000 of the $200,000 budget allocated by serving 10 households that now work and reside in North Minneapolis. In 2017 and 2018, 70% of the households served identified as BIPOC, and 70% were at or below 80% AMI. 50% work in private or nonprofit businesses based in North Minneapolis, and 50% are employees of Minneapolis Police Department, Minneapolis Public Schools, Minneapolis Parks and Rec, and Metro Transit based in North Minneapolis. Staff is requesting an amendment to contract 43507 with Build Wealth Minnesota in an increase of $100,000, not to exceed $200,000, to originate and underwrite the Grow North down payment assistance loans on behalf of the city for the remaining pilot program funds, which is expected to serve an additional 10 households. Upon conclusion of the pilot, staff will evaluate whether adjustments to the HOME program are warranted. Staff is also requesting the authority be delegated to the CPED director to extend contracts 44269 and 44310 through December 31st, 2020, with approved Homeownership Opportunity Minneapolis Lending Administration service providers, Build Wealth Minnesota and NeighborWorks Home Partners, subject to approved budget. Are there any questions?
So I have a couple questions. I noticed that the first slide that showed the homeownership disparities and how little change we'd seen from 2013 to 2017 didn't include 2018 or 2019. And of course, as policymakers, we're anxious to see if the tweaks we made in 2018 having better results. Do you know when we'll have more information about 2018 and 2019 in terms of the disparity, or do you have information on that now?
I would think it would be later in 2020. Where's Elfric? It's our data research analyst that compiles information.
And we also, if Alfred wants to come up, that's fine. Also, that one graph was a little bit concerning that showed the progress we made in reaching more households of people of color, and then it went down this year. So I'm curious about what that is and what significance you think that might have, or should we be worried about that?
We will evaluate the whole program, the whole year the program's been in effect after the end of this year. So that number is through August. But we will evaluate it as we are currently evaluating our programs to see what the impact is and what changes need to be made, if any.
Appreciate that. Alfred, did you want to add anything? No, Dr. Okay.
The response, good afternoon. Alfred Port, Manager for Residential and Real Estate Development Services at the City of Minneapolis Community Planning and Economic Development. The response that Erica gave is sufficient in regards to the data. Most of that information is census-based, and we'll provide additional information once we compile the information from the work that we've done, as well as others within the region.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I don't see any other questions, I think. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry if I missed this, but on slide 8, when you talked about the percent that were at or below 80% AMI, did you have any more detail about what percent AMI those are at, or could we follow up?
I can follow up. I do actually have the amount that they earn.
Perfect. I know Councilmember Ellison isn't here, but there's been some discussion, I think, about just kind of tracking this program and just making sure that we're hitting the goals that we are setting out to achieve. And that's a pretty high AMI, even for any neighborhood in the city. And so just the question about,
What exactly?
Yeah, exactly.
No, thank you, Chair Gordon and Council President Bender. I will follow up with that information. No.
There you go.
It's this one, right?
Well, and
Yeah, and there was a little bit on the previous slide, too.
Okay.
And I guess the question is, if they're at or below 80% AMI, would there be some that are at 70%, 60%? Are we getting down to 50%? Because I think there's interest in that, and of course there's concern that you still have to be making so much money just to qualify for the loans in general, even without this help. So if they were all at 80%, we'd, I don't know. So
Thank you.
That's the question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Gordon. I will follow up with that information.
Great, thank you very much. Seeing no other questions, then I'll move the staff recommendation that's before you to renew the contract with Bill Wealth and the other actions there, including receiving and filing this impact report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And now we're going to move on to contracts for culturally specific capacity building, which relates to this matter as well.
Thank you, Chair Gordon, members of the committee. Erica Coleman, Senior Project Coordinator, CPED Housing. Today I bring forth the culturally specific capacity building notice of funding availability recommendations. The first 3 goals of the 2040 comp plan refer to eliminating disparities, increasing density, and providing access to affordable and accessible housing. In response to the public feedback regarding the need to build capacity with organizations directly connected to and doing work in various communities, on August 22nd, 2019, we released the Culturally Specific Capacity Building Notice of Funding Availability, or NOFA, The goal of the NOFA was to seek applications to fund initiatives and/or programs that build capacity within communities that are marginalized and disenfranchised, support housing stability, and offer tools to close the disparity gaps in homeownership. Up to $80,000 of one-time funding is available. Applications were due on September 19, 2019. A total of 10 applications were received. Staff reviewed all applications submitted based on the following criteria: a culturally specific model and approach, organizational staff and/or board representation reflective of the community to be served, and beneficial impact to and with the community that is being served. Staff recommends a funding award of $12,500 per organization for 4 organizations that plan to use funds for implementation or expansion of a program and/or initiative to impact access to homeownership and housing stabilization options: Build Wealth Minnesota, Black Women's Wealth Alliance, Hope Community, and Powderhorn Park Neighborhood Association. Staff recommends a funding award of $10,000 per organization for 3 organizations that plan to use funds for increasing organizational capacity and marketing efforts for their current programs to impact access to homeownership and housing stabilization options: Neighborhood Development Alliance, Biggie Win Community Loan Fund, and CAPI USA. All organizations recommended for funding will complete quarterly and overall end-of-program reporting that include demographics served and outcomes of programs and initiatives implemented. Due to limited amount of funding available through the Culturally Specific Capacity Building NOFA, as well as support and funding through other city-sponsored programs, staff is not recommending the following 3 applications: African Development Center, Hmong American Partnership, and Project for Pride and Living. Are there any questions?
No questions at this time. Any comments or committee members would like to make? I will move that approval then as listed on the agenda of those contracts. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. Thank you very much for spending your time with us, Ms. Coleman. And now we'll move on to our next agenda item, and the next couple of things have to do with our funding for affordable housing, and Ms. Geisler will be the first one up. Thank you. Welcome.
Great. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair and Council members. My name is Amy Geisler. I'm with the Residential Finance Division of CPAD, and I'm here today to present our recommendations on the 9% low-income housing tax credit recommendations. And as you know, this is one of our most important programs that we use to finance the deepest affordability in our rental projects within the city. So you'll recall from prior years that the 9% housing tax credit program is a federal program administered by the IRS. It provides a reduction in federal tax liability to investors in qualified low-income rental housing throughout the country. The first step in our annual allocation process is the adoption of a qualified allocation plan and a tax credit procedural manual, which were approved by the City Council last May. We released our RFP for applications in June, and we received 7 applications for 9% credits this year. This year, we have about $1.4 million in 9% tax credits available. And again, I mentioned we received 7 applications requesting a total of $6.9 million in credits. The applications were reviewed and scored according to the approved qualified allocation plan for this year. And the scoring results are included as an attachment to this report. So staff is recommending funding for the top 2 scoring projects this year, and those are the Paris project and Amber Apartments. Paris was the highest scoring project, and we are recommending that they receive their full request of just over $1 million in 9% tax credits. And the second highest scoring project is Amber Apartments, and you'll recall that they received a partial allocation last year. And so this year we're recommending that they received $259,000 in 9% credits this year. And both of these awards will fully fund both projects and position them to move forward to construction. So this leaves about $157,000 in remaining credits for this round. So we have a couple additional recommendations related to that. The first one is we are recommending that about $25,000 be awarded to the Maya Commons project, which is a project by PPL, which is currently under construction. And we're recommending that this amount be awarded to them to resolve an administrative error related to their tax credits from a prior allocation year. So it's not an additional tax credit award to them, it's just to offset a partial return that they're doing of those prior tax credits. So that leaves about $131,000 in remaining credits, and we as staff are recommending that those be returned to Minnesota Housing as the state 9% tax credit allocator for use in the state's credit pool. And the reason for that is, first of all, this is a highly unusual situation that we would be in where we would have a small remaining balance like this. And given the low scores and the large credit needs of the remaining projects that apply to us, awarding this small amount to one of those projects would not really enable them to move forward to full funding. So that's why we're recommending it be returned to the state, and they would take a similar approach in this situation where they don't, if a credit amount is below a certain percentage, they would also not award it. They would be looking to award it to a different project. So with that, we have representatives from our recommended projects here if you have questions for them, and I am available for questions as well.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for that report. I was also thinking that we're going to be relying on Minnesota Housing to provide housing infrastructure bonds for other 30% projects down the line. So perhaps, in a way, we could view this as cooperating on the 9% tax credits to get something much larger back for deeply affordable housing projects in the city. Do you want to comment on that or not?
Well, I guess I'll just say that the city does have a long-standing relationship with Minnesota Housing. We work together to fund our projects, at multiple levels. We do occasionally, kind of swap small amounts of credits back and forth, because it is such a precious resource. We don't want to return it to the federal government. If we couldn't be used in the city, we want to make sure it could be used somewhere else in Minnesota.
Thanks for making that point. Do any committee members want to hear from any specific projects? And we certainly are glad that people are here to celebrate this with us and to be here to answer questions if you have any. I'm not seeing any questions for you right now, though. So thank you very much for that report. And I'm then prepared to move the staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. Now that motion carries. And now we'll move on to our Affordable Housing Trust Fund Award. And Ms. Skilden is here for that report. Welcome.
I am. Thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. I'm Angie Skildum from Steephead Residential Finance. Carrie Goldberg is unfortunately feeling under the weather today. She would like to be here to do this herself, and I wish she could be because it's an awful lot of work that we go through. But I want to just start out by emphasizing that today is a very big day for the residential finance team. The trust fund recommendations before you represent months of hard work on behalf of many city staff members, and I really want to recognize my entire team for all of their commitment and cooperation and professionalism in getting us to this set of recommendations today. And today is a historic day because thanks to the mayor and the entire city council, we had a record $20 million available in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund budget this year. And today we are pleased to make recommendations on awarding $18 million of that budget to 12 projects across 7 different city wards. We're also recommending reserving $1 million for our successful contingency pool model for closing projects that are a little bit stuck in the pipeline, and then leaving $1 million in place for pipeline opportunities. These investment numbers are impressive, but what is truly important is that these investments represent the production or preservation of 1,022 homes for individuals and families in our community. 375 of these homes, or almost 40%, are deeply affordable for families at or below 30% of the area median income. And further targeting those with highest need, 75% of the units are affordable at or below 50% of the AMI. 3 projects add new wards to those fulfilling the senior housing goal that the city has of 1 project of at least 35 units in every ward. We have an additional project that adds units under the SRO shared housing pilot that the Council created to provide deep affordability to the city's most vulnerable populations in a cost-effective way. I do want to point out that even with this historic level of investment in the trust fund, we remained oversubscribed in this round. We had a record 19 applications requesting a total of $36 million overall. There were solid applications that we were not able to recommend for funding, and we will continue to work with those projects and those applicants to be successful in the future because the housing needs persist. As a very brief refresher on the program funding, the trust fund budget is comprised of 4 sources. Those are the CDBG, or Community Development Block Grant Program, from the federal government, the Home Investment Program from the federal government, local funds, including general funds and pooled TIF, and then relinquished funds from previous projects that were awarded and were not able to close in a timely manner or needed to be restructured. So the amounts and the allocation of these sources are determined during your annual budget review process, and projects funded through the trust fund will remain affordable for a minimum of 30 years. So turning to this year's recommendations, in our evaluation, staff takes into consideration the scoring of the project, which is provided in the attached staff report. The scoring reflects the degree to which the projects meet city goals and policies, but we consider other items in addition to the score, including project readiness and financial feasibility, support service plans and compliance with design guidelines, project location, and also ability to secure funding from other funders. Every application is reviewed and evaluated using the trust fund underwriting standards and criteria that are adopted by the council every spring. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to read off the list of all of the 12 projects that you have before you. They're in your committee report, and I would refer you to that. Specific details on each of those 12 recommended projects are also provided there. Similar to the tax credit folks, we've got representatives from all the projects in the room, and I can take any questions.
I don't see any questions right now.
Great.
Maybe if you're here either for the low-income housing tax credits or because of a Affordable Housing Trust Fund award, you could just raise your hand so at least committee members here or maybe others, other folks here representing these fantastic projects. And I just have to say that I'm incredibly impressed by the applicants and the projects that are coming forward and the enormous amount of work that goes into getting these ready to come through. It's quite a privilege that I can be part of helping to support these, and that my colleagues can be at the city. And of course, we're doing this work on behalf of our constituents and the residents of the city who see what an incredible need there is for affordable housing in our city and want to see us be able to support that. I also am impressed this year with how many are more deeply affordable projects coming forward and the effort that's gone into that. Sorry we didn't have enough to support all the good projects that came through that were out there, but delighted that we could support more than ever before in this way. So thank you for being here, and thank you for all your work, and also, of course, thanks to our staff for helping us create this fair and clear process of vetting and going through and coming forward with these recommendations that I'm supportive of. Councilmember Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are 4 of these projects in the 7th Ward. 2 of them that are fulfilling long-term goals and dreams of the people that live in the ward that I represent. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to just say a few words about them. First of all, I want to thank Jim Graves and his family and their family foundation for building affordable housing for youth coming out of foster care in the Lowry Hill neighborhood. Location says everything, and I think it's really important to see these youth find a place so close to transit in a very safe neighborhood where people really care. They've waited 3 years for tax credits, and so I think it's time. And I had a lot of tax credit projects in my ward last time too, but congratulations to you. For many years, as the author of the Senior Housing Initiative, I thought I had a project in my ward, and then redistricted that project out of my ward, and so I'm now teeing up another one in the neighborhood that I live in, Bryn Mawr, which has almost no rental housing, and today's partial allocation will allow 100 units of affordable housing for seniors to move forward in the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. Why is that important? Because it will free up homes in that neighborhood.
neighborhood, smaller homes, that seniors who want to live in the neighborhood could move into an apartment building, and then there could be, maybe as many as 50 homes then that could be available over time to other young families who could move into a neighborhood like Bryn Mawr. I would be remiss if I did not mention that the very first project I ever worked on in my career on the City Council is here to do another great thing. Our friends at Beacon, who are working on Lydia Apartments, that was the very first project I ever worked on. It was a conversion of a nursing home that Plymouth Church had taken on, and they built 40 units of deeply affordable housing. They came back in about a year ago to talk to me about building some housing on their parking lot, and I said, can you build twice that amount of housing on that parking lot? And they're coming forward today with an investment in rehabbing some of the housing that was already built, as well as adding another 40 units to that site. Since that time, Plymouth Church Foundation has become Beacon, and Beacon has a second project on our list today in the North Loop neighborhood, and I congratulate you on that as well. And maybe lastly, and it doesn't say this in the report, I claim credit and support for my dear friends at Catholic Charities for the incredible project they're doing to help replace housing that is going to be eliminated in the downtown core, and providing 167 units. I mean, did you hear that number? 167 units. It's unbelievable. 126 of them at 30%, deeply affordable in the Elliott Park neighborhood. I don't think they want to really go public with the site at this time. But I just want to call out and recognize Catholic Charities for the incredible work that they have done over many years, not just Higher Ground in both cities and the Women's Shelter on Chicago Avenue, but this project that is going to preserve housing for some very vulnerable adults living in the core of downtown, and hopefully that will create a waterfall of yet another project maybe at that old site. So, there's a lot of talk about whether or not there will be affordable housing in wards like the one that I represent. And the reason there is because my constituents strongly support deeply affordable housing in the ward that I represent, where they live. And so I think when you see a list like this and the number of projects in the 7th Ward, it's a testament to the public and the constituents and the proposers and the developers who are working really hard to make incredible things happen. I am very, very deeply grateful to staff, including Angie Skildum and all of the people on your team. This is not like, working at a foundation and giving out money and seeing if the program works. It's much more complicated, involved in working with other jurisdictions as well as the people who submit these applications. It takes a massive amount of work, and more money doesn't mean less work. More money means a lot more work, but a lot more happiness in the end. So I want to thank you all, as well as all of the people who are here who are working on projects. For me, it's a really meaningful day, and I appreciate the chairs making this a discussion item.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Those were excellent. I'm also excited about all the projects that are coming forward, obviously, and I'm glad that with the Exodus project and Catholic Charities, we have been able to successfully test out our single-room occupancy shared housing concept and pilot and see that support this effort. I think that's going to be a key to solving our housing crisis, is how we can help provide those kinds of homes. I also want to say to Carrie Goldberg, if you're at home, thank you very much for all your work. I'm hoping you're not watching this, but you never know about us. Any more comments or discussions? And there are certainly projects throughout the city, and we appreciate that, that we're spreading them around. Then I'll move this staff recommendation forward for approval. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion carries. And now we'll move on to our 8th item, and this is kind of a report from the Office to End Homelessness. Partly because we're renewing our memorandum of understanding with Hennepin County, thought would be a good time to check in, and I think we'll have a two-person reporting, Mr. Hewitt and Topinka.
Thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. And it's a hard presentation to follow. It's very exciting, but this is another important piece of work that the city and county are working on together to reach the lowest income households in our community. So what you have before you is consideration of the memorandum of understanding between the city and the county to support the Office to End Homelessness, and the city and county coordinate the responsibilities for managing and supporting that office, which is led by David Hewitt, and he's going to come up here in a moment to share more about that. But the existing MOU that the city and county have for the office expires at the end of this year. So the MOU in your report is for a new 3-year MOU between the city and the county, and the city's it would be $50,000 pending budget approval in the MOU, and that's subject to an annual appropriation. And the city's contribution of that $50,000 accounts for about 6% for the overall staffing of the budget of the Office to End Homelessness, with the rest coming from the county and HUD. And so I'm going to turn it over to David Hewitt to talk more about what the office does and what the city's investment in that office does for our community.
And you said 6%?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hewitt.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair and Council members, and thank you for having me on such an exciting day, actually. It's really nice to be here for all of the previous announcements as well. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about the work of the Office to End Homelessness. In addition to myself, there are 6 planners and 1 analyst embedded within the Hennepin County Human Services Department that focus on strengthening the homeless response system within our community. Today, I'd like to briefly highlight a couple of our key functions, leveraging resources and increasing the efficiency of the system overall. With regards to leveraging new resources, so the Office to End Homelessness is responsible for our community's application to HUD and their Continuum of Care program each year. This is an annual competitive funding process in which HUD rewards communities that can show they have a well-coordinated response system that is using best practices to make homelessness rare, brief, and non-recurring. The funds they provide go to non-profits in our community to provide rental assistance and support services that currently serve around 1,600 households each year to help them exit homelessness and sustain housing. Half of those households are families. In the last 2 years, we've successfully increased our community's annual award by almost $1.5 million per year, and our latest full award from HUD was almost $13 million. Included in these increases were bonus funding for new housing programs for seniors who have experienced chronic homelessness and for households fleeing domestic violence. These programs are now serving people in our community and helping them exit homelessness. In the most recent application, we were also able to reallocate more than $2 million within our existing annual award, and this will enable us to launch new housing programs for single adults experiencing chronic homelessness starting in 2021 and annually renewable thereafter. I do have 1 slide, or maybe 2. This is my favorite slide. It's a rich data slide. We use it for job interviews. I'm not sure if I can. Actually, no, I'm just saying it publicly. So we ask people to tell us what they see in it. To give you the context, so Hennepin County is the only county in Minnesota that has a right to shelter policy for families. And what you see here is a month-by-month breakdown of the number of families in shelter over the last few years. In 2014, more than 1,500 families used shelter across the year. In 2018, the number was 862. On November the 5th of this year, we had 23 fewer families than the same night last year, so we fully expect to see a further reduction when 2019 is complete. This is the product of many efforts. Enhanced prevention services have reduced first-time homelessness, for instance, but the increased success in both moving families out of shelter and the reduction in recidivist families returning to shelter does coincide with the implementation of coordinated entry starting in 2015. The Office to End Homelessness has worked with all stakeholders, shelters, outreach teams, housing programs, to implement this coordinated entry system, which rationalizes the process by which vacancies in homeless housing programs are filled. This has involved implementing a common access, assessment, prioritization, and referral process across more than 100 different programs, connecting more than 1,000 people to housing each year. It serves to ensure we are targeting those with the greatest barriers and needs to our most intensive services. Implementing coordinated entry is one of the means by which we've increased our competitiveness for the aforementioned HUD funds, but it has also been a significant contributing factor to the dramatic reduction our community has seen in family homelessness in recent years. It's going to get so granular, so it's hard for me to point out. But to draw attention to one particular point of data in there, as I turn on to a slightly easier to read slide. In April and May of this year, we saw a dramatic reduction in the average length of time families had been in shelter. That coincided with the opening of Minnehaha Townhomes. And I wanted to pull this up particularly as an illustration of that partnership between the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, the City of Minneapolis, and the support that they provided to this project. Hennepin County's contracted providers in providing support services to families in this settings, but the coordinated entry system was what enabled us to ensure that 16 families who had extremely high barriers and long histories of homelessness were able to move out of long experiences of being in shelter, long experiences of instability, and into this incredible new setting where they are now thriving. And this once more shows us that with partnership and coordination, even those who have experienced these major crises in their life can really thrive in our community in deeply affordable housing. So with that, Chair Gordon, council members, I thank you for your continued partnership in this work, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So I guess I wanted to ask a question about the current situation and looking back at last year at this time, how concerned we were about people sleeping outside. We took some rather dramatic action as a city and created a navigation center. Hopefully we learned some lessons there about what we could do. And so I'm wondering how you can, how concerned you think we should be as we're moving into this winter, and also anything that the county's doing to get more shelter this winter, or that we could support in the efforts to see more shelters opening this winter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair Gordon. Should we be concerned? Yes, we should be deeply concerned. The number of single adults experiencing unsheltered homelessness has approximately doubled over the last 2 years. So while we've seen this incredible reduction in families experiencing homelessness, we've seen an increase in the single adults experiencing homelessness at the same time. This shows us that the reductions in families haven't happened by chance, or we would be seeing it across the board. It does speak to the very real challenge of finding deeply affordable housing. Everybody we see in this situation is in that 30% AMI bracket and below that we've been hearing so much about with regards to the developments earlier. So there is a root cause of this, which is that lack of deeply affordable housing that people can access. But absolutely, we need to address the short-term measures and short-term safety as well. Our office has actually just recently briefed the County Board of Commissioners with a vision for the shelter, the single adult shelter system, particularly looking at lessons both from the Navigation Centre last year and from the progress we've made in our family system, and made a series of concrete costed recommendations that would help us to lower barriers to shelter, recognizing that for at least some experiencing unsheltered homelessness, it's not necessarily a question of capacity within the existing shelter system. It is other barriers that prevent them from accessing it, often related to what we refer to as the 3 Ps of pets, partners, and possessions. So we have set out costed recommendations around allowing more partner beds into our system, creating more storage in our large shelters. We've also set out some measures to improve outcomes. Ultimately, the pressure on our single adult system is because more people are becoming homeless than are exiting homelessness, and our shelters need to do a better job of supporting that throughput into the housing programs that are being developed. So we have set forward some recommendations around increased staffing and case management, especially in the large shelters where the bulk of people on any given night are experiencing homelessness and where the services are the most minimal. Again, looking to the example of the Navigation Centre, which was extremely service-rich and had higher than average housing outcomes in that setting. We have also set out recommendations around increasing some capacity for underserved populations. In particular, this summer and fall, or autumn as I call it, we've seen stress around access to shelter for women in particular, where we've had on average 20 to 25 women per day presenting for shelter, wanting to access shelter that does exist in our system. So this isn't about those barriers, it is just about capacity, and the capacity constraints meaning we haven't been able to meet that need. So we have set forward some recommendations around increasing funding and support for women's shelter in particular. Also looking to the Navigation Centre, we see a great need for more culturally specific services tailored towards the Native American community, and creating a space that's more welcoming and accessible to that community as well. So we've set forward these recommendations. They are not in the County Human Services budget for next year as yet, but are part of the discussion that is going on around the budget currently.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for being here today. And I think it's great to get the chance to learn more about this in a more sort of calm, less emergency environment than we've had in the past. I've had the pleasure of serving on the executive committee for Heading Home Hennepin since I took office, which was 6 years ago. So I'm one of the longest serving members of that group now because there's been so much turnover in elected officials and staff in that time. And I think, kind of referring back to the chair's question, I think upon reflection to last year, it's important to me going forward that we maintain the strength of this partnership and that when we have a crisis that we're really relying on the staff that have been on the ground, on the front line, day after day, year after year, who really understand the system and its pros and cons and can help really advise and guide us. And I think we see the impact that we can have in the city's more traditional role of funding housing, permanent housing and supportive housing. And so I don't think we should take lightly the idea that we've been diverting city funds from housing to shelter without having a more robust conversation with our partners at the county and the region and the state. And certainly we need more funding for shelter, emergency shelter, and I want to commend the county for their leadership, not just in our county, but in the region. I'm part of a public sector unsheltered homelessness leaders group that none of us could ever remember the name of that group, but the lieutenant governor has been convening it. It actually dates back to the Dayton administration, and the county is there really helping convene, along with Ramsey County, the 7 county service providers. There's now a spreadsheet of every single shelter in the region that's ready, that's proposed and ready to go, that has a funding need or a gap. And I've just really seen the leadership from the county staff in that venue as well. So I think we have a strong partnership, and certainly always room to grow and continue to learn, and especially I think the changes that have been made to help make sure our system is really better serving the most vulnerable folks in our community, really addressing the communities that are seeing homelessness rates that's so much higher, their population, our Native American community, our Black community. But also being proactive and looking at policy change that we can pursue together. In Minnesota, 16,000 families are evicted every year. 75% of them lose their homes. And we're starting to build more of a statewide coalition of support for renter protections and eviction expungement reform, things that are on our IGR agenda, but that communities across our state are facing. And, again, the county has been a partner there in really helping to articulate the downstream impacts of having some of these policy gaps at every level of government. So that's a long way to say thank you. And I hope, again, in the future that we can really continue to rely on the expertise of this staff team in addressing unsheltered homelessness in particular.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions, but I think the fact that we're signing on to this memorandum again should demonstrate to you and the county that we are partners in this work. We want to stay involved and engaged. And I'll just note that we're certainly happy that you're here as part of the team and the effort. The information provided is very helpful, and I really appreciated your report and for coming in today to talk to us. Thank you. Thank you. One more thing from the council president, but
you don't have to. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just, just because I spoke for so long, and I was remiss in not mentioning, I think we've actually all gotten better at really centering and including people with lived experience in experiencing homelessness and paying people for their time and their work. And so I just want to lift up that piece of this partnership too, and our commitment to continue that and build on it going forward.
thank you. You didn't want to happen to move approval of authorizing the memorandum of understanding, did you? Sure. Okay, excellent. So with Council President's motion then, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And now for our last item, this is a report on the staff direction that we gave previously on request for proposals or the possibility of such for analysis for a rent stabilization program. And Ms. Shelton-Walczak will be reporting and giving us an update. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Gordon, Council President Bender, and fellow committee members, my name is Danielle Shelton-Walczak. I'm one of the co-deputy city coordinators in charge of strategic initiatives. I'm here to give a brief progress update on the staff direction of October 2nd for an RFP for an economic impact analysis for rent stabilization. The staff-directed group, comprising of my office, community planning and economic development, and regulatory departments, have met and explored different potential requirements of the scope of services or contract deliverables based on the staff direction, existing city policies, and individual department expertise. From there, I began reviewing resources provided by CPED staff, but also researching other cities, such as, including but not limited to, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, City of Tacoma, Berkeley, City of Mountain View, and states whom have annual rent cap ordinances, paying particular attention to their ordinance findings. And I also looked at our previous minimum wage scope. All of this to inform the potential future scope of the rent stabilization RFP. As a result, a draft of some substantive contract deliverables was completed and circulated to applicable council members and the staff work group for review and comment last week. In terms of expense, at this point, the RFP is estimated to be at approximately $150,000, and this is based at looking at our own previous minimum wage scope and CPED's experience in economic impact analysis RFPs and other requests of this nature. The conjecture thus far is that an academic institution or an academic or economic-based institution or organization, or even a housing-based institution or a combination thereof, is likely to apply for the RFP. As for timeline, the goal is to start the RFP process by having a draft to the Permanent Review Committee by no later than December 18th. And then once that is approved by the committee, the RFP would be posted soon thereafter once funding has been secured to meet the March 2020 deadline that was in place in the initial staff direction. That concludes my progress report. I'm available to stand for any questions.
I just want to have clarity. You're estimating the cost would be $150,000, and that's money that we don't have in the budget right now.
That is correct.
Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a reminder, when we excuse me. Oh man, sorry. Gave that staff direction in coordination with you, Mr. Chair, we had asked for this check-in so that we could prepare ourselves to look for funding to put in the budget for next year. So Councilmember Ellison and I are working on that, and we'll be talking with folks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Just wanted to make that clear. No problem.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thanks so much for your work on this and for your report. I'll move to receive and file that update. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.